Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, goldenblack.com Saturday Simulcast with Brian Neubert, brought to you by the Union Club Hotel, 11 Bistro, and of course, Boiler Up Bar, Leaps Coffee, all three places. I don't know, Brian. Yeah, Brian's been to the Boiler Up Bar. He's been to every Union Club hotel in the United States as well.
I am quite a sophisticated man about town, you know.
Yeah, I know you are. And I
Mhm.
was going to say they signed up for another year, which we're grateful, but they haven't quite. Our Vicky Wicks, who we talked to there, isn't watching all of yours. I brought her up to speed on all the locations, and she loves the idea.
Tell her to get
So
on it.
I know she needs
I
to get
need
on
comfortable places. I need fancy places to
it.
be on the road.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, one thing news about the Union Club Hotel voted Travel and Leisure is the only hotel motel property in the in Indiana on the top 500 list. Quite a tribute to the work that's been done and that's all the more reason why they should expand. And I think Brian, you're a
You've got a
business
winning
guy, so
formula. It's
simple
time
as
for
that.
scale. It's time for scale. Scale it
That's
out.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to talk some with Brian on the show, so to speak. We'll be talking basketball, and why not? Uh, Boilermakers on Thursday. Talk to Matt Painter and watch a little bit of the practice as well. But let's start with that, and then we'll get into Kanon catchings and some other topics as we go. But just the overall, talking to Matt after practice on Thursday. Your feel for what's gone on so far in June.
I think we should change the name of this podcast to Cannon Fodder because it's what we've been talking about every week for
I wanted to. That's why I wanted to start with something else, and then we'll get into
because
the can of fodder.
how did I not use that while it was relevant to me? I don't know. I'm
Uh,
sorry. What was your question?
my question first, before we get into the cannon fodder, is just about the storylines so far in June with men's basketball. You got Sha'Carri Harris now trying out for the Mexican Olympic team, but you've got a lot of newcomers. What say you is the things that we should be paying attention to so far with the start of practice?
Yeah, obviously, a lot of the plainly apparent stuff. How is Purdue going to look without Zach Edey? He was the centerpiece of everything they did offensively, everything they did defensively. Now he wasn't, the imbalance between him and everyone else was narrowed quite a bit from 2 years ago to this past year, and that's a big part of the reason why Purdue was so good this past year. But now you kind of have to recreate yourself a little bit. You've got a lot of those um, supporting players, and I shouldn't use the term supporting player about Braden Smith.
Yeah.
He was a co-star more than he was a supporting actor, because I think the combination of Braden Smith and Zach Edey was really what made Purdue as good as Purdue was more than anything, from a personnel perspective anyway. And now you got to rebuild with Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Renn being kind of your foundation. And then you've got the five freshmen coming in, some of whom are going to have to play, obviously, the backcourt being the spot where they're obviously going to have to get some help without Lance Jones and without a lot of depth at guard. In terms of storylines for the summer, nothing outside the ordinary. This is what college basketball is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a bit of reinvention every year. It just hasn't been for Purdue as much lately because they've had so much continuity. When your best players stay in the program, for years at a time, unlike a lot of places that you get kind of the same thing every year, only a little bit better. Now it is going to be different, but kind of the same because you know what you have in two really good guards, one really good big guy or a front court player who just needs an opportunity, and that opportunity comes now. And how all those other pieces coming in sort of fit around those three is sort of just what's to be figured out this summer. I'm sure the scheme will be different in some way, shape, and form. The playbook will be different in some way, shape, and form. And obviously the playbook and the personnel will be different in some way, shape, and form. And these are really important summer practices for Purdue this year more than the last several.
Yeah, Purdue is so different, and Matt Painter talked about that on Thursday, just on the whole notion that there is continuity, there is building up of not only the five freshmen that are coming in, but also just the fact that there is stability in this lineup. Is that truly that makes Purdue unique, right? I mean, it is what it is, but there aren't many schools, not only in the Big Ten, but around the country that are going to have some of the luxury Purdue has in terms of a continuity standpoint. Even though you have five new
Yeah.
players that are going to make a contribution this year, probably.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's obviously Purdue's winning formula is to get guys, develop guys, keep them around, build team chemistry, build positive relationships between teammates and things like that. And that's what we've talked about a lot here lately. It's sort of Matt Painter's way of trying to get out in front of it. And I think it stands or get out in front of problems on the front end of recruiting or team building, whatever it might be. And I think it just kind of stands out a little bit more as an outlier these days because of how a lot of other people are doing it. It will catch up with Purdue eventually. Somebody will transfer. You didn't expect to transfer. Somebody will show up Wednesday for his physical on campus, and then on Friday call and ask for a release from his letter of intent. I know a guy. Um, Somebody will get hurt. Something will happen, and your ability to keep the same team, year one, year two, year three, year four,
Right.
will probably be compromised to some extent. That's just the nature of things happening. But for the time being, Purdue is going to stay with this sort of team building model, and then obviously supplement as needed with transfers when possible. Now, when we have these conversations, I think I sometimes come off like I'm demonizing the other way to do it
Yeah.
in terms of building through transfers. There's no right way, there's no wrong way established yet. I don't know if there ever will be. There are two
Yeah.
very different ways of doing it. This is just the business Matt Painter has chosen, and it's working, obviously.
Yeah. UConn, last year's national champions, did did some of both, and will continue to do that. Others will do that as well. Illinois, as you well documented, did more of it than most and still finished second in the Big Ten, and won the Big Ten tournament championship. It's not like they had a bad season. So,
Well,
yeah,
we
I
also
agree.
shouldn't glance over the fact that, Purdue wouldn't have been in the national title game if not for Lance Jones.
Correct.
But that's a supplementary deal. That's not a deal where Purdue is going out recruiting its best players every year. It's that core that Painter wants to keep intact year on end. And, so far so good. You've had Zach Edey, Braden Smith, and Fletcher Lawyer together for 2 years. Now you have Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith back for another year. Trey Kaufman has been in the program when he easily could have split last year. I'm sure people were working on him to try to pry him away from Purdue as soon as Zach Edey came back. But Purdue's done a good job keeping guys in the program, and that speaks to how they've recruited, how they've treated their guys, how they've been fair to their
Right.
guys, how they've evaluated personalities, and just how they've done a good job building teams before teams even show up on campus. And that's a topic I'm sure we'll delve into here in the next few minutes.
Yeah. All right. When you look at also some of the newcomers and a little bit of a glimpse that you've had, the CJ Coxes of the world. I know that Jack Benner's been battling a health issue and other things, but just some initial impressions, just watching Daniel Jacobson, who you'd seen before, obviously in the summers, but what you see from those guys, the new guys that have come in.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to go to practice yesterday and actually
Yeah.
watch. We had a clarinet conflict.
I know that.
So this would have been my first chance to
That's right.
really
To see
see.
Jacobson. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this would have been my first chance to really see Daniel Jacobson do something other than just shoot free throws in the practice, basically. But he's huge. I mean, he is all of 7'2" plus, whatever he's listed at. Doesn't seem exaggerated. He's skinny, he's narrow, but we knew that coming in. I mean, anybody who saw him play with USA basketball saw what his body looks like. He's going to have to get bigger and stronger. Of course, he's going to have to get bigger and stronger. That's the nature of most big guys. They don't come in looking like Zach Edey. They don't come in looking like Caleb Swanigan, you know. Um, but he is really good. He's physical for a guy who's not got quite as much to his body as you would like. He throws around what he's got, which is very positive. That speaks to his ability to rebound. That speaks to his ability to block shots, and that's where his short-term sort of impact could, be explored. Purdue doesn't have a lot of size at the rim. They don't have a lot of length. They don't have a lot of, shot blocking potential. Will Berg is huge, but I don't know if I'd call him a shot blocker until we see that part of his game really come out. That said, he's not really had a chance. Caleb
Yeah.
First, I wouldn't call him a rim protector. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I wouldn't really call him a rim protector. Um, Rim protector and shot blocker are two different things, but I think shot blocking is something Purdue could use a little bit of and is a little bit of a reason now to really try to fast track Daniel Jacobson to get out there, on top of the fact that you've got a need at center. You've got a want, again, to put a traditional big guy next to Trey Kaufman-Renn at times, sliding Kaufman-Renn to the four. And I think you just sort of want to get Jacobson out there, knowing he can be really good, and experience now can accelerate that process in year 2 and year 3 when you might really have something on your hands. But outside of that, it's the two guards. It's Jakari Harris, who obviously was not at practice yesterday. He's in Arizona trying out for the Mexican national team. CJ Cox, they're both kind of the same positional category where they're 1-2s. They can play both positions. They can back up both positions. CJ Cox probably has a little bit more point guard game to him. So that might be what sets them apart a little bit more. Jakari Harris might be a little bit of a better off-ball defender at this point, in addition to being an on-ball defender. Both of them can shoot. So when you get defenders who, now understand, they have to know what they're doing before they can be effective defensively. That's a huge part of this. But when you get defenders who can make shots and you don't compromise one for the other, that's a pretty valuable and hard to find commodity, because you'll see a lot of the time shooters who don't defend or defenders who can't shoot. I think these can both be sort of 3-and-D sorts of guys.
Yeah. Harris's opportunity with the Mexican Olympic team, if he makes it to, you've talked or written about a guy that is maybe well suited to play early and play an important role early. Just anything else with respect to that opportunity in Olympics? It seems like if you get a chance to do that, it'd be hard pressed not to do that if you get the chance to make that team. What do you think about Harris and where he is, and maybe what that experience will mean this summer? Should he advance and make that team and head to Paris?
Yeah, I can't speak to the talent level trying out for that team. I'm not an expert on basketball in Mexico, nor did I expect to be covering a story in which a Purdue freshman was trying out for the Mexican national team this summer. But I guess he has Mexican descent on his mother's side,
right?
Mexican heritage, so he's eligible to try out. It can't hurt. I mean, anytime you're around good competition, and anytime you have to be in a situation where you have to earn something like that, I think it's always good. All of these guys in college basketball, they come to campus, whatever campus they're going to, having never had to run the risk of being cut from a team.
Yeah.
Right. For the most part. Now you have guys sometimes who have kind of been the proverbial diamond in the rough, who have gone through some things to get to where they are. You have the really high end guys who go to tryouts for like USA basketball stuff or stuff for like NBA camp or whatever. They get cut, but 99.5% of these players haven't had to try out for a team, credibly try out for a team, since they were, toddlers probably. And I just don't see any downside to being in that sort of competitive environment for any of these guys. And I think that's something that's been really valuable for Purdue, having all of these guys over the years who've had these opportunities with USA basketball and things like that. So I don't see how this doesn't help Jakari Harris in some way, shape, or form. Make the team, don't make the team, whatever. I don't see how it's not a really positive thing for him.
Yeah, and a competitive kid that seems to fit the mold for what Purdue is looking for, and then some. And the bloodline for him on his mother's side, but also certainly on his father's side with Glenn Robinson, important as well. All right, now we are to the Kanon fodder portion of our program, and you've been talking a lot
Can we
about
get a
that.
graphic for that?
Yeah, maybe we ought to do that. We've been talking about our graphics offline, but and you'll be doing, I know, on Friday night doing Indianapolis radio. Everybody wants to know with Matt Painter's comments yesterday about Kanon catchings. Already a story you did report in terms of Purdue's take on this. Did you glean anything else from what Matt said yesterday in terms of this story and the fact that Kanon catchings is at BYU and not at Purdue?
No, it's just he's an honest guy, and like
Yeah.
you could kind of see the wheel turning in his head where he wanted to kind of stop talking and just kind of leave it at he asked for his release and we gave it to him, and
Yeah.
then you could kind of see him like you kind of knew he was just going to tell you what happened because that's
Yeah.
just what he did. I mean, he's honest to a fault, and he's not at fault in this situation. It's what happened, and I don't think anyone in Kanon Catching's camp would take exception to that. His mother in the Indianapolis Star, Kyle, wrote a story talking to her, and she basically, in so many words, said a lot of the same stuff. Said, he was looking for a program that can, quote, support his timeline. And I think this is what I've kind of said. I don't know if I've written on our site, said it on a radio show, said it here. It all runs together. But, when Purdue recruited Kanon Catchings, he was a skinny, awkward, socially awkward, immature kid who Purdue was going to take to develop into a really good college player. Part of the reason that the family was so on board with Purdue was because it was going to be a real life college basketball experience for him. The family, a lot of them had been through legitimate college basketball, legitimate professional basketball. They understand the process. They understand that things are hard. And Purdue doesn't shy away from that stuff. And they laid down their standard spiel to the Catchings family. And it was one of those occasions where the family was all in on it. And all this stuff that deters a lot of kids and a lot of families and isn't the sort of stuff that a lot of people don't want to hear is exactly what they wanted to hear. That's a credit to Purdue, and that's a credit to the family. Couple years later, now Kanon Catchings is not quite as skinny, not quite as awkward. People know who he is. People have seen him play. People have put small numbers next to his name on internet sites. People have put a fifth star next to his name in some cases on internet sites. He's been to some of these events. He's been to some of these USA basketball events. He's played big time grassroots basketball. Now he has to make a decision where he wants to go to get the best structure possible, where his family wants him to go. And I think they viewed it as a real growth opportunity for him to basically get kicked out of the house and have to go live on his own in Atlanta with Overtime Elite. And from a developmental perspective, I'm sure that was great for him. It is credible coaching down there. It is credible strength training down there. It is nice facilities. It is quasi independence. It is also all dudes who are trying to play in the NBA. And it's all dudes who are talking about how much NIL money they're getting from wherever they're going next year. And everything is geared toward professional life, professional basketball. And you get in that situation, you're coming of age, right?
Yeah.
As a young person, you start to view yourself differently. People are putting him on early draft boards, again, on internet sites. There were NBA scouts at that Overtime Elite game I went to at Broad Ripple back in the winter. People are looking at him in that context. So why shouldn't he look at himself in that context? Now, you take the situation he was going to come into at Purdue when he committed, And the reason he committed so early was he didn't want to be recruited. He didn't want to be bothered. He didn't want to have to be on the phone with Tom Izzo and Chris Holtman and all the other people who wanted to offer him scholarships and recruit him. He just wanted it over with. So he limited his options then. Then he went through some ups and downs as he was, trying to figure out what he wanted. Ultimately, he starts viewing himself as an NBA draft pick. He has every right to, every reason to, when he knows how talented he is. People are viewing him a certain way. I personally don't see him as a guy who can come out next year. I might be very wrong. I always viewed him as a year 2, year 3 sort of guy, who's going to make a big jump at some point physically. But he views himself as a pro now. And if you want to go be a pro now and you want to get drafted, 12 months from now, what do you need here the next 4 months? You need minutes, you need shots, and you need unconditional commitment from your coaches to get you to where you want to go. By extension, you need to be the priority over your teammates in a lot of ways. Purdue did this with Caleb Swanigan. A lot of people had to do different things to accommodate what Caleb Swanigan wanted to do. Matt Painter made promises. He kept every single one of them. Did that move in year 1 make Purdue better? You could have a real debate about that. In year 2, obviously, it paid off. But year 1 was complicated. Now, if Kanon Catchings is looking for that sort of commitment, that sort of path to where he wants to be a year from now, and you just hand that over to him, what are you saying to Braden Smith, right? You just took us to a Final Four. You're an All-American, but now it's all about Kanon. And if he doesn't play well and we lose because of it, we still have to get him where he wants to go. Stuff. I'm not saying this was anything sinister. There was no bad guy here. This was Kanon Catchings deciding he wanted something different. This was Matt Painter understanding, hey, we can't give this to this young man, or I can't credibly say we can give this to young man, and I owe it to the rest of my team to not give this to this young man without him earning it. Whereas Kevin Young out at BYU, who's never met Kanon Catchings, to my knowledge, prior to these past few weeks, has a whole new team. He can just be like, hey, man, I just came from the NBA. I got all these minutes. I have no returning players. You're our guy. You can do whatever you want to do. He's got a guy on his staff who is at overtime elite who hopefully, for Kanon Catchings' sake, understands the attention Kanon Catchings is going to need. Purdue knew this kid for 3 years. They had a relationship with him. They know the family. They have lines to people in his support system. They understand some of the ups and downs this kid is going to go through. And those ups and downs were going to be pointed, most likely. He was going to play for Purdue this year. He was going to get minutes. He was going to get an important role, most likely. He was not going to play 35 minutes a game over Trey Kaufman-Renn. He was not going to play 35 minutes a game over Camden Heide or Miles Colvin. He was not going to be this team's leading scorer. There were going to be games where he might not take a shot. There were going to be games where he'd play 5 minutes. There were going to be games where he might play 25 minutes. He was going to do what Miles Colvin did this past year. Anyone who covered Kanon Catchings, anyone who knows Kanon Catchings, knows that when he goes bad, when he struggles, it is not pretty. He is known to have tantrums is a strong word, but he's a very emotional young man. He got called for a lot of technical fouls in high school. I've seen him more than I've seen any other high school player I've covered, sitting at the end of the bench by himself. I've seen him mouth off to coaches. This is part of being young for a lot of kids, and it's just part of what he is at this stage. He may grow out of it. He'll probably grow out of it, but he's going to need help in the meantime with that process. He's going to need a lot of attention at BYU, and I'm sure BYU has some understanding of what it's all about because they have the guy from Overtime Elite who was at least around him for a year.
Yeah.
But this was going to be a big job for Purdue, and it was going to be probably a bigger job um, than the payout would have been. I go back to AJ Hammons years back. Purdue committed to him. They lost games because they committed to him his freshman year, but they had to play him. He was their most talented guy, and they knew that putting him on the floor was going to make him a great player year 2, year 3, year 4. He was a little different for a lot of reasons, but Purdue lost games because they put him on the floor as much as they did. But they did it with a purpose. And it paid off long term with AJ Hammons. He still never won an NCAA tournament game, but that's kind of beside the point. He was a great player. Should still be playing in the NBA, if not for some of his personal inconsistencies. Kanon Catchings is going to have every chance in the world to be an NBA player one day. It just was going to be something that Purdue was going to have to commit to doing for him. And Purdue's commitment lies in trying to be another really, really good team this year. There was no bad guy here. This is Kanon Catchings has every right to decide what he wants, even if it's 3 days before enrolling in school. Purdue had every right to,
Move
be
on.
proactive in parting
Yeah.
ways, which I do believe Purdue did. Purdue weathered a couple ups and downs here. I know I'm talking forever, but this is a nuanced story. It is a nuanced story, and people don't get that. People view it as A versus B, a binary kind of one. Somebody's the good guy, somebody's the bad guy. It's not like that. It's about human relationships. It's about a coach understanding he's got to do what's best for his team. It's about a kid understanding that he needs to do what's best for himself. And this really was better for both sides here, because if you got to the situation with Kanon Catchings this year, where he was in the position that Miles Coleman was in February, that wasn't going to be good. And
Yeah.
Matt Painter's, quote unquote, worst nightmare as a team builder is having that guy at the end of the bench who's not happy and who's draining everyone else's energy. I don't want to be so cynical as to assume that Kanon Catchings would have been that guy, but his track record with
Yeah, you saw it firsthand.
such things, I've seen it firsthand a bunch of times, and so has everybody else who's paid close attention. And I think, to his family's credit, they get it. They understand. They don't make excuses for him. They don't coddle him. They have done everything I think they can do to help him. But he does need help. He will need help. I don't mean like anything serious beyond like basketball support, stuff like that.
Understood.
All the stuff that college athletes get anyway, academic support, stuff like that. But this was going to be a big job for Purdue, and it could have gone a lot of different ways. And in my opinion, Kanon Catchings was going to be the guy at Purdue in like year 3, not year 2. And you have plenty of time to fill that gap before it's even been created. He could have helped this year's team. Probably not as much as he would have needed to really show people beyond college what he wanted to show those people. So this really is, and I know this sounds like story laundering. I know it sounds like I'm just parroting Matt Painter, whatever it is. This is the best for both sides. This really was one of those deals where there's no bad guy. This is a mutually beneficial split. I know people get hung up on the number of stars next to a guy's name, and they view college basketball as a fantasy draft where if you just amass the most stars on a list, you're going to win. It's not like that. It's not like that at Purdue. It's not like that at a lot of places. What are you doing?
I am moving because
Thought I was in a Talking Heads video there for a while.
no, you weren't. But I was moving because this is an indictment of your answer.
Did I talk so long that I made you physically
my
uncomfortable?
battery almost ran out, and I had to make dang sure it didn't. And
All
so
right, well,
I had to move.
I'm out of things to say. I've said everything I can possibly say. I want to reiterate once again, this is not
I'm
a
plugged
good
back
guy
in,
versus
so
bad guy
continue.
thing. There is no bad guy here. I still have Google News alerts set. People still use those apparently
Yeah.
for the terms Purdue recruit, and I'm getting all these Kanon Catching stories. that say Matt Painter claims that
Yeah.
he broke up. Claims is a loaded word. In journalism school, we're taught not to use it. But then I'm also seeing headlines about how suggesting that Matt Painter hunted Kanon catchings and took some sort of joy in it. Completely inaccurate. That is just
Yeah.
not the case. You need to cover stories like this for years on end before you really understand them sometimes. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying it is my job to cover these things. It is my job to get as into them as possible and know the people involved, understand the dynamics at play. And I think I just laid it out there in as blowhardy fashion as I possibly can. I don't know how anyone is still listening to this because that was ridiculous.
No, but I think that is, and not to, this is the difference between it drives me nuts on the Google alerts, not only from Caitlin Clark stuff that you get every 5 seconds if you've ever Googled her name and about everything she's done, but it's the same thing on the catchings deal. This is much more of a complete story, and there is, as you said, and have reported consistently, this is a nuanced story. It's never as simple as some folks make it out to be. And obviously, the whole
Yeah,
story. I don't
people
know it.
tend
Now you're
to
telling me. Go ahead.
people tend to draw conclusions in situations like this. Oh, there was an
All
agent
the time.
involved. There was another school messing with him. I'm not going to say that another school wasn't messing with him. I have no idea. That the guy at BYU was entirely possible that he was talking to
True.
Cannon Catchings all this time. I mean, he's got a relationship, right? And there are no rules in the NCAA anymore, so it doesn't really matter. But he's got a great family. He's got a great support system. His mom gets it more than any parent I think I've ever covered. Um, that's probably a overstatement because there've been some really, really good ones over the years, but they are good. They understand the deal, and they understood what was best for him, and that part of that was why they really wanted him at Purdue. Now, over the course of time, you have to also understand that kids want what kids want. You can't, you know, you have to kind of let them do their thing at some point. And I think it's realistic. If this were a kid who had no chance of ever getting drafted, if this were like me coming out of high school, um, I would hope my parents would be like, hell no, you're going to Purdue or you're going
Yeah.
to Rutgers or you're going to um, St. Peter's or you're going to Fairfield or
No,
you're going to some
I
other.
wanted to go to the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Oh, I couldn't get in there.
Okay.
No, I couldn't get in NJIT. No way.
Okay.
Um, so it's not like this was a deal where somebody had their hand out looking for money. It's not like this was some deal where
Didn't need it. Yeah.
there was a parent who just decided, oh, Purdue's not good enough for my kid or something like that. This was a kid changing the way he perceived himself based on credible information and credible outcomes that changed the way he perceived himself. And obviously his parents weren't going to stand in his way, nor should they. If Canning Catchings is a first round draft pick in 12 months or um 24 months,
Right.
whatever it might be, he did what was best for him and he was right to do it. And Purdue's going to win a hell of a lot of games the next 2 years regardless. So there's no real victim here either. And people trying to make this into a clickbait story and people trying to make this into a, you know, so and so owns so and so as we tend to do online these days, or Matt Painter's lying about this to save face. It's just not accurate. It's just
Yeah.
not real, and it's just stupid to even talk about.
All right. All right. One last question, even though, and we do still have people watching and listening to this. Zach Edey, obviously a big week for him in the NBA draft upcoming. And just a quick thought on that. I know again, it varies on where that's going to be. Do you have any other further insight or thoughts in terms of what we may see later this week on where Zach will end up?
Yeah, I think that he's going to go in the first round. I'd be astonished if that wasn't the case anymore. I think that's been a given for some time now. The two teams personally I'm looking at are Memphis at I think 9, and I'm not sure where the Knicks are, but the Knicks have a couple of first round picks. Mitchell Robinson's going to be a free agent, and I think he'd make some sense there. But I think that there's a lot more interest than people are probably going to give him credit for, just because people tend to look at him as somebody who doesn't work in the NBA anymore. That's not accurate. Good players, no matter what their dimensions are, work in the NBA. You can just go back and look at any number of examples. What was everyone's opinion on Luke Cornett coming
Yeah.
out of college as a potential pro? Right?
Yeah.
Luke Cornett just played meaningful minutes for the NBA champions. Is going to be set financially for the rest of his life. Now, I'm sure Luke Cornett moves maybe a little bit better than Zach Edey, but I guarantee you there's things Zach Edey does better than Luke Cornett, or can do better than Luke Cornett. You get with the right system, you get with the right coach, you get with the right personnel around you, you can make it a long, long time, no matter who you are. The thing in the NBA for Zach Edey's is you are no longer the guy. You are the guy who has to make the guy better. That means if you're playing next to Jason Tatum, you need to rebound, you need to guard, and you need to run, and you need to set screens. Stuff like that. If you're the guy with LeBron, you need to make open threes from the corner. You need to set screens. You need to hit the glass. You need to do all of that stuff. You need to outlet the ball quickly, get them in transition, things like that. Zach Edey, all of his body of work at Purdue basically is of him being the guy everything ran through. And now you have to boil that down to, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things that he can do to be a Robert Ory or a Drew Holiday or one of these guys who good teams always seem to have, champion teams always seem to have. You look at what PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford did for the Mavericks this year. Neither of those guys are stars. Those guys are just complimentary dudes. PJ Washington makes open threes, Daniel Gafford rebounds and dunks. And they transformed Dallas at the deadline. All of a sudden, you get the best of Kyrie Irving, you get Luka just healthy enough.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everything gels at the right time, and you're in the finals. Zach Edey just needs to be a Daniel Gafford, and he'll play in the league for. They're different players, but I'm just saying he just needs to be a Daniel Gafford in terms of what he does. And all of a sudden, he's in the NBA for 10, 12 years. He's in the retirement program. He's set for life. In terms of who's going to draft him, I think Memphis makes a lot of sense. As somebody said yesterday out at practice, if he gets through the lottery, people are going to be trading up to try to get him. I think that he's kind of one of those guys who, could surprise a lot of people how high he goes, or he could, just be that back end first rounder. And but I think he's going to be a first rounder, no doubt, which he has certainly earned. I mean, you can't work harder than he's worked. You can't have done more at the college level than he has done. And I think he has certainly put himself in a pretty good position here.
All right. My battery is connected, but we are done. By the way, and only because I can type and listen at the same time, the Knicks have 24th, 25th in the first round, 38th pick in the second round, 3 picks in the
Well, he's
top
not getting to
38.
38. He's not getting to 38.
No.
But those
but I
two
think
picks in the
could be.
20s, if he gets that far.
Yeah.
The Lakers would make a lot of sense too. Somebody to put next to Anthony Davis when he needs to not play center to not get hurt. Stuff like that. There's lots of teams out there who could use a ditch digging big guy, and he's perfectly capable of being that guy.
All right, Brian. Thank you for the time
God.
today. We had
I put in my
long
Twitter bio.
It's supposed to be a 20-minute show. It was 45. I don't know what it was, but it was good.
They say I put in my Twitter bio, insufferable blowhard. And there are some people where you look at them, you say, take them seriously, but not literally. Well, take me literally, because I am absolutely obnoxious.
All right, but I'm going to try to take you seriously too, and I do, and I have for all these years. And it's been a betterment of my situation. All right, thanks again, Brian. We want to thank the Union Club Hotel, the Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro for their support. And a reminder, you can click if you're watching this on YouTube. Special for YouTube watchers that you can subscribe. And as Brian always says, we do want to remind people we do actually write for a living, and we being mostly Brian and Tom, but there's a lot of good stuff on our site. We also have a message board that might be worth your time in terms of interest. and think about subscribing to us. We would
Rate
appreciate
and
that very
review.
much.
Rate and review.
Rate and review too. Yep, absolutely. We want that as well on YouTube for all the thousands, if not millions, of you out there that are watching and listening.
If you're
You
not
anything
a
else?
if you're not a crypto bot or a porno bot, feel free to leave a comment after this video on YouTube. Apparently, that's important too.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Subscribe, like, and subscribe, the whole shebang.
All right. And on that shebang, we'll say goodbye. We'll be back next week for a little bit more of probably a little bit more some football, a little bit of basketball.
Let's talk about Kanon catchings for another 4 hours.
No. I'd like to say we're done with poor Kanon, but I don't know if it's poor Kanon. But
Purdue might play BYU in San Diego. We might have to have like a special breaking news hour-long live stream simulcast, instant reaction sort of special.
I think we should start doing that anyway. We should just dial you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're up sometimes, and we can, just start doing these things like the other folks do, just to make sure we have the instant. I forgot about BYU going out there and the Boilermakers playing, and they're one of the new. Was it BYU and Mississippi are the two teams? And then
Ole Miss and NC State replaced Notre Dame and Arkansas.
That's right, out there for the Thanksgiving tournament, the Rady Children's Classic.
Is it Rady or Ratty?
I always thought it was Rady, but I've been wrong more than I've been right, so it could be. We'll find that out. We'll get back. You can tune in next week to find out if which one is correct. All right, have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.
How am I going to find out? It doesn't have a pronunciation guide on its website, I'm sure.
Well, I'll find out. My sister lives out there. She knows. So we'll find out. So,
what if she's wrong?
All right. Well, that's the risk you always run.
I have never trusted a word a Karpick has told me, and it's never. It's never treated me wrong.
I know. It's a dangerous thing to start doing it. All right. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching or listening, and Brian will be back with more to talk about next week as well. Take care.